August 1619. Off the coast of Point Comfort, a ship loomed over the horizon, its cargo bound to change the course of history forever. This was no ordinary voyage. The White Lion carried 20 enslaved Africans, men and women forcibly taken from their homeland, marking the first documented arrival of African slaves in the American colonies. The journey had begun months earlier, in the heart of West Africa. Villages were raided, families torn apart, and lives forever changed. Once captured, they were marched to the coast, enduring unimaginable hardship. Their destination: the dungeons of the slave castles. The castles along the West African coast served as a grim gateway. Here, the enslaved were herded into cramped, dark dungeons to await their fates. On the ships, the enslaved faced horrors beyond comprehension. Disease, starvation, and abuse became their daily reality. When the White Lion docked at Point Comfort, the captives were traded for supplies. Their lives became commodities in a foreign land. Among the captives was a young man, Kwame, whose spirit remained unbroken despite the chains. His journey tells the story of resilience. Kwame had been a free man, a warrior, and a leader in his village. Now, he stood on foreign soil, forced to understand the language of survival. The settlers quickly divided the captives among themselves, assigning them to grueling labor in tobacco fields and households. The system of slavery had begun to take root. Kwame's spirit was not easily broken. He began to observe his captors, learning their ways and seeking opportunities to resist. By night, the enslaved whispered their stories to each other. Songs of their homeland carried their pain and their hope. Among the enslaved was Ama, a young woman who had also been a leader in her community. Her courage inspired Kwame and others. Together, Kwame and Ama began to organize small acts of defiance, from slowing their work to sharing secret messages. Though they were enslaved, they found ways to honor their heritage, keeping their culture alive despite the oppressors' efforts to erase it. The settlers, suspicious of the growing unity among the enslaved, began to impose harsher punishments. Fear was their weapon. Kwame's resolve only grew stronger. He knew that their survival depended on unity and the hope of freedom. One fateful night, Kwame and a small group attempted to escape, risking everything for a chance at freedom. The settlers quickly realized their absence. A relentless hunt began, the air thick with danger. The escape attempt ended in heartbreak. Most were captured, their punishment swift and merciless. Though the escape failed, it ignited a fire of resistance. Kwame's unwavering courage inspired others to dream of freedom. The settlers grew more ruthless, hoping to crush the spirit of rebellion. But the stories and traditions carried from Africa gave the enslaved strength. Kwame and Ama began teaching secret messages through traditional songs, turning music into a weapon of resistance. As whispers of rebellion spread, the enslaved dreamed of liberation, not just for themselves, but for future generations. Kwame and Ama planned one last act of defiance, an uprising that would shake the plantation to its core. The night of the rebellion arrived. Armed with makeshift weapons and the courage of their ancestors, the enslaved rose against their captors. The rebellion was fierce but short-lived. The settlers' firepower overwhelmed the resistance, and the aftermath was devastating. Kwame and Ama faced brutal punishment, but their actions planted a seed of defiance that would grow for centuries to come. The story of Kwame and Ama became a legacy, passed down through generations. It reminded the enslaved that freedom was worth fighting for. From these first captives grew a movement, a slow, painful journey toward freedom that would define the soul of a nation. The story of the first enslaved Africans in America is a painful yet vital chapter in the history of the United States, one that reminds us of humanity's darkest depths and its brightest resilience. From the shores of Point Comfort to the civil rights movements of the 20th century, the fight for equality has been long and unyielding. Kwame and Ama's legacy lives on in every act of defiance, every voice raised for justice, and every step taken toward a better future. The journey of the enslaved Africans who arrived in 1619 is one of unimaginable suffering, but it is also a story of hope, resistance, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Today, their courage inspires us to confront injustice wherever it arises and to build a world where freedom and equality prevail for all.